I hold the view that the Russo-Chinese alliance is sending shivers, and I want to imagine that the diplomatic fronts are being worked, metaphorically speaking, on a daily basis. But as we have learned during the short term of the second coming of the presidency of President Trump, the only predictable thing about Trump is unpredictability. He does not say what he is going to do, whether it will be another tariff regime, whether it will be a new sanction regime, whether it will be supplying long-range missiles to Ukraine, whether it will be supplying more Patriot missiles to Ukraine, whether it is going to be more sanctions on the officials from Russia. Nobody knows, and anybody who pretends to know is swimming into the shark-infested waters of speculation. But that does not stop us from building scenarios. And scenario number one to me is that possibly as we speak now, the administration of President Trump is doing everything within its power to engage President Putin and to engage President Zelensky, that there is a wisdom in having something as an armistice or a modus vivendi in the style of South and North Korea. So that once you have a modus, an operational modus vivendi and armistice, then it will freeze things and then negotiations can begin to happen. With the understanding as a quid pro quo on the part of Ukraine that we will freeze your application to join the European Union or NATO. That is scenario number one. Scenario number two is that Ukraine becomes very intransigent because of the encouragement of France and Germany and the United Kingdom, and says that as a condition precedent to any kind of ceasefire, the territories currently occupied, including Crimea, must be returned. And if that is the position that is taken, I want to believe that Russia will not play ball, particularly on the basis of the arguments that are in the public domain, which would then mean that some European countries would want to be engaged a lot more in the conflict, because in the minds of some European powers, this is the time to defeat Russia. And the question is, can you defeat Russia? It is not something that is not going to be easy. But Russia may also want to say that we now have allies. And China, in my view, would not be averse to saying, we are going to be that ally. We are big, we are nuclear, and if you want us to bloody our noses, we are going to cast our lot with the Russians. That is another scenario, in which event the Europeans would want to say that this is now a NATO affair, which brings another spin. Will the Trump administration then say we are putting boots on the ground? And I don't see appetite for that in the United States, particularly on the basis of extant evidence. So that the United States may very well say this is a war that is being fought in distant lands. We are not going to be interested in it, and our participation will be very token to the extent that we supply some arms, and particularly because those arms are also giving us access to the natural resources of Ukraine. And the other scenario, which I think is unlikely but not impossible, is that America becomes more involved on the side of Europe, and who knows, never say never, casts its lot with Russia and China, and reminds Europe, remember in 1990, we said not 1 inch more, let Ukraine be Finlandized, that, as we used to say in the early days, let them be neutral, so that they are neither with Russia in terms of intimacy or with the NATO or the European Union. And I have no doubt in my mind that minds better than I in the diplomatic arena are working along all these, because in all these countries one sees that the appetite for conflict is reducing by the day. And that appetite is one that ought not to be fed by megalomaniacs or egoists who think that this is the time for yet another conflict in the continent of Europe, whether wittingly or unwittingly. That is what I see happening. And I'm waiting, like all the rest, with bated breath. What will be the communique that will be issued by Russia and China on the 3rd day of September? China presents itself as non-threatening, almost weak at times. But I think that is a strategy. China has discovered that in order to get into spaces, you don't need to show arrogance. You don't need to project raw power, that you can be strong and powerful in a very silent way. And you can see their diplomacy, almost velvet, iron fists in velvet gloves. And I think it is very effective. In the Republic of Kenya recently, when a survey was conducted, 71% of those who were surveyed said that they preferred China to the United States. And how are they projecting this? By being involved in things that touch people's daily lives. They're involved in infrastructure development. They're involved in offering scholarship for people to go and learn in China. They are opening Confucius Institutes in major universities of Africa at a time when the Americans are withdrawing their support through USAID, and the Europeans are following suit. But by reduction of what they call aid, the Chinese are coming. They are saying, we are not even giving you aid. You are just good friends and brothers. Of course, that is not always true, that they are giving it for nothing. There is something in it for them. But that non-threatening approach is what is endearing China as a country to different parts of the world. Not only in the continent of Africa, but you can see it even in Latin America, you can see it in Asia, and you can see the meetings, and you can see the reactive diplomacy. When you see the Americans reacting and having meetings with the Japanese, having meetings with the South Koreans, having meetings with the Filipinos, it is in reaction to the soft diplomacy of the Chinese, which has seen them engage with different parts of people in that neighborhood in the Pacific region. You saw only recently the meeting with the Chinese with the Australians. So it's interesting. There are too many moving parts in this machine called the world, and one can only wait and see, even as the parts continue to move, sometimes in an apparently uncoordinated manner, but coordinated nevertheless.